Ever heard of a stock like just skyrocketing, like
Oh.
over 7,000% in like just a year?
Yo, yeah, that's that's definitely something. 7,000%.
It's the kind of return that makes you kind of sit up and pay attention, right?
I'd say so. Yeah, for sure.
Well, it happened, well, sort of.
Okay.
The book we're diving into today is called The Perfect Stock. And it's a fictional story, but it's based on a real company, Kaiser International,
Hmm.
and how their stock just like exploded.
Oh, interesting.
And we're going to look at not just like what happened, but how it happened.
Okay, so like the mechanics of it.
Yeah. And what's cool about this book is it's told from the perspective of like a researcher, almost
Yeah.
like a financial detective,
Mm.
hired to figure out how this all happened, like the how behind this massive growth.
Oh, I like that. Like Sherlock Holmes, but for stocks.
Exactly.
That's cool.
So Taser's IPO is right before 9/11. Talk about like perfect timing, right?
Yeah, wow. I mean, timing is everything in the market, and that's like textbook. Talk
Yeah.
about being in the right place at the right time.
Totally. And the book talks about how David Ritchie, the founder, he really pushed for that quick IPO, almost like he knew something big was about to happen.
Hmm.
And that demand for less lethal weaponry, yeah, just exploded after 9/11.
Right. Makes sense.
But as the book digs into, there's more to the story than just, being in the right industry at the right time.
Okay. So there's more to it than just luck.
Right. The perfect stock actually like pulls back the curtain on the role of the investment bankers.
Yeah.
Like especially the ones at Saks and Saks. They were really good at creating buzz like around Taser early on.
So they were kind of like the hype machine.
Yeah, and they would strategically distribute the shares to key players.
Oh, so creating that scarcity.
Exactly, and that just drove up the demand like crazy.
Classic.
Okay, so we've got like a hot product, perfect timing, and these savvy bankers pulling the strings. Yeah, the stage is set.
So now let's bring on the players.
Right, let's do it.
The perfect stock introduces us to some pretty interesting characters. First, there's John Romano. He's like this charismatic stockbroker who was amazing at getting early investors on board.
Okay, so like the ultimate salesman?
Yeah, like the book says he could sell ice to Eskimos.
Wow.
Then there's Alex Doulis. He was a pool operator, so basically managing a smaller, more agile fund. He rode the Taser wave with like $12 million.
Nice. Not bad. Not bad.
But the real star of the show, the one we're going to be like really learning from, is Boyd Hunt. He's a veteran speculator.
But speculate.
And Boyd, he's the real deal. He made a fortune not by like gambling on stocks, but by like understanding market psychology.
Okay, so like reading the tea leaves, so to speak.
Yeah, and the book really like digs into how he managed risk. Like that was his secret weapon.
That's huge. Risk management is everything.
Totally.
So are we going to like learn how to do that from this book?
Right?
That's what I'm hoping. I think this deep dive is going to be way more than just about Taser. We're talking about the psychology of the market.
Yeah, I'm into that.
The book, it uses the Taser story to explore some pretty timeless principles, like how to follow the smart money, how greed and fear drive the market, and how to know the difference between speculation and
And just throwing money at whatever's
yeah,
hot, right?
exactly. Because let's be honest, a lot of people, they see a stock soaring and they just want to jump on board, like FOMO all the way.
Oh, yeah. The fear of missing out. That gets a lot of people.
Totally.
Yeah.
And that's where discipline comes in. That's where Boyd's story is so valuable. His strategy was never about like chasing the next hot thing. He literally documented every single trade, stuck to his stop-loss orders like religion, and he never let his emotions like get the better of him.
Oh, so he had rules. He had a system.
Oh yeah, he was all about the system.
Okay, stop loss orders. Can we talk about that a bit more? I think a lot of people, maybe myself included, could use a refresher on what exactly that means.
Yeah, for sure. A stop-loss order is basically like an automatic instruction you give to your broker, and it tells them to sell your stock if it drops to a certain price. It's like
Oh, so it's like a safety net?
exactly.
Yeah.
It's a way to limit your losses.
Yeah.
Kind of like an insurance policy for your investments.
That makes sense.
So Boyd was all about protecting his downside, which makes sense, right? But how did he pick his winners in the first place? Was it all about like reading charts and crunching numbers?
That's what I'm wondering, yeah.
He definitely used charts, but not in the way most people think.
Yeah.
For Boyd, charts were like a window into market psychology, a way to see what the smart money was doing.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
So he's tracking the big guys, the institutional investors.
Exactly, like who's really driving the bus.
Gotcha.
And when he spotted a potential winner, He wouldn't just go all in. He built his position in Taser gradually, adding to his wins, cutting his losses, never deviating from the plan. It's like he built his fortune.
Brick by brick.
Exactly. With a level of discipline and patience that most of us probably envy.
I'm starting to see why he was so successful.
Yeah, he played the long game. But eventually, like all good things, Taser's price peaks and crashes.
Right. What goes up?
Exactly. And that's where the book gets into those cautionary tales. The people who get caught up in the frenzy.
Oh, the ones who didn't get out in time?
Right. Like Shorty McKenna. He was the quintessential short seller who just kept betting against Taser. He was so convinced it was all hype that he just kept doubling down.
Oh, man. Betting against the trend can be dangerous.
It is, and it ended up costing him a fortune because he underestimated how powerful that hype could be.
Ouch. Expensive lesson.
Yeah. It reminds me of that saying, the market can stay irrational longer than you can stay solvent.
Oh, yeah. That's a good one.
And then there's Stu. He's like the entrepreneur who's always chasing the next hot stock. He made some money on Taser early on, but then he got greedy and jumped back in right at the peak.
Oh, no. Classic mistake.
And he rode it all the way down.
So, two very different approaches, but the same outcome.
Exactly. And I think what the perfect stock is trying to tell us is that having a strategy is key. You can't just get swept up in the emotional roller coaster of the market.
You got to have a plan and stick to it. Emotions can be your worst enemy in the market.
Totally. It's like the first rule of investing. Don't let your emotions rule your decisions.
Right. You got to think with your head, not your heart.
Yeah.
Or your gut.
Exactly. And the book introduces this other character, Bill Cantor. He's practically addicted to trading, and he just jumps from one hot stock to the next.
Sounds a bit like a gambler, not a speculator.
He is. He never learns from his mistakes, and he just embodies that, like, impulsive, thrill-seeking side of the market, the side that can be really dangerous.
Yeah, it's a slippery slope.
It is. The market can be like a casino, you know, all those bright lights and promises of easy money. But if you don't know what you're doing, you're going to end up losing your shirt.
So true. The perfect stock doesn't sugarcoat anything. It really shows both the good and the bad, right? The potential and the risk.
Yeah. And it reminds us that those patterns of market psychology, they're not just for like the Taser craze or whatever. They happen over and over again.
They're timeless. Yeah. Human nature doesn't really change.
Exactly. So, okay, we've talked about what not to do.
Yeah.
But what can we learn from the people who did it right?
That's the question, isn't it?
Like, how do we avoid becoming another Shorty or Stu?
Right. Give us the good stuff.
Well, the book does offer some answers, and in part 2, we're going to focus on the winners, like Boyd Hunt and that pool operator, Alex Dulas. They both made a killing on Taser, but their approaches were totally different.
Interesting. I'm curious to hear how they pulled that off.
Me too. And we'll dig into that next time on our deep dive into the perfect stock.
Boyd, he's almost like a blueprint, you know, for how to navigate these like tricky market waters. Remember, he wasn't about like possibilities. He was all about probabilities.
Yeah. Like he wasn't trying to predict the future or anything. He was just looking for signs, you know, signs that the smart money was making a move.
Okay, so how did he tap into that? Like, was he hanging out with hedge fund managers, getting like insider tips?
Not quite. Haha. Boyd was more about observation and analysis, I guess you could say. One of his key principles, and this really stuck with me, was the power of limited supply. You know, he recognized that when there are fewer shares of a stock available, any increase in demand can push that price way up.
So it's like supply and demand, that basic economic principle.
Exactly. It's like so basic. But the book makes this point that so many investors, they just completely forget about it, you know, and they get caught up in the hype and everything.
Right.
Boyd also looked at the price action of a stock, not just like the day-to-day, but the bigger trends.
Okay.
He was looking for stocks that were making like higher highs and higher lows, a sign of underlying strength.
So like upward momentum. Right. He wasn't chasing random spikes. He was looking for a sustained upward trajectory.
Gotcha.
But like beyond the technical stuff, Boyd was also a master at reading between the lines, you know.
Okay.
Like he studied company filings, news reports. He even looked at message boards,
Yeah.
anything to try to get a feel for the narrative, you know, the story that was building around the stock.
So he wasn't just crunching numbers. It was about understanding like the psychology behind why people were buying.
Exactly. He knew that markets are driven as much by emotions as by, you know, the fundamentals.
Right.
And this is key. He understood the difference between speculation and gambling.
Okay, hold on. What's the difference? Because to me, those sound like the same thing.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think that speculation, like how Boyd did it, it's about calculated risk, right? It's
Mhm.
like doing your research, having a plan, managing your downside.
Okay.
Gambling is just like throwing money at something and hoping for the best.
So like poker versus roulette. One's about skill, the other's just luck.
Perfect analogy. And Boyd, he approached the market like a skilled poker player, you know? He
Mhm.
knew the odds, managed his bankroll, and never let his emotions like cloud his judgment.
So the book goes into his actual
It
trade.
does, yeah. And it's really cool to see how he puts all these principles into action.
So walk me through it. How did he play Taser?
All right, so Boyd had this interesting system. He'd start with a small test buy, risking no more than 20% of his capital.
Mm.
And if the stock moved against him, he had a stop-loss order in place to automatically limit his losses.
Ah, that's where that comes in. It's like a safety net.
Exactly. And it let him stay in the game even when he made a bad call, you know? But here's the really smart part. If the stock started going up, he would add to his position gradually,
Ah.
always keeping that stop loss in place, but moving it up as the stock climbed higher.
So he was locking in profits along the way, like building a pyramid, but with money.
Yeah, exactly. And it allowed him to ride those big trends without getting, caught up in all the little ups and downs.
He was patient, disciplined.
Oh, yeah.
That takes some serious self-control.
It does. And honestly, the book doesn't shy away from how difficult that is, especially in a crazy market like this one.
Right.
Remember those cautionary tales, Shorty and Stu? They really show how dangerous emotional decision-making can be.
Shorty, that short seller, yeah.
Yeah.
He just kept betting against Taser, even as it kept going up.
Yeah, it's like he just couldn't accept that he was wrong.
He was overconfident.
Totally. He thought he knew better than the market, and it cost him.
Big time.
Big time. And then you've got Stu, the entrepreneur. He got caught up in the FOMO, the fear of missing out.
All right.
And he bought back in at the worst possible time.
It's like they both forgot the first rule of investing. Don't let your emotions rule your decisions.
Seriously. And then the book brings in this other character, Bill Cantor, and he's like addicted to trading, constantly jumping from one hot stock to the next.
Oh.
Yeah. Never learning from his mistakes. He's like, he embodies that impulsive side of the market,
Yeah.
the thrill-seeking part,
Right.
which can be so dangerous.
The market's like a casino, right? Full of bright lights and promises of easy money, but
But if you don't know what you're doing,
yeah, you're going to lose it all.
the perfect stock is so good because it doesn't pretend it's all sunshine and rainbows,
Right.
It shows you the good and the bad. And it reminds you that those patterns, the market psychology stuff we've been talking about,
Yeah.
it's not just limited to Taser. It happens all the time.
So it's happening right now
Oh, yeah.
in today's market.
100%. It's like human nature.
So we've talked about what not to do, but what can we learn from, like, the people who did it right?
That's the question, isn't it?
How do we avoid being a Shorty or a Stu?
Right. What are the secrets?
Well, the book gives us some pretty solid advice, and I think it starts by looking at those who succeeded,
Okay.
like Boyd Hunt and Alex Dulles, the pool operator.
Right.
They both made a killing on Taser, but their approaches were totally different.
Okay. I'm intrigued.
So how do they approach things differently, and what can we learn from each of them?
Well, Boyd, he was the patient one, right? Super disciplined. He waited for the right setup, managed his risk like it was his religion, and he just let his winners run.
And they both got out before the bubble burst.
They did, and that's another huge lesson from the perfect stock.
Okay.
It's not just about finding the winners, it's about knowing when to walk away.
Right. So how did they know when to get out? Do they have a crystal ball or something?
I wish. It was more about recognizing the signs of a market top, Boyd, Mr. Discipline, he stuck to his system. He had these predetermined sell signals based on his technical analysis, and he didn't hesitate, at all. When those signals flashed, he was out.
So he had rules, and he didn't let his emotions break them.
Exactly. He knew that even the best stocks can turn bad really quickly, and he wasn't going to let his feelings get in the way. Alex, the pool operator, he had a slightly different approach. He was more focused on timing his exits to maximize profits for his investors.
So he was playing a more strategic game.
Yeah, he was looking for those moments when the market was getting frothy, when there were way more buyers than sellers.
Okay.
And he used that final push, that buying frenzy, to sell his shares and lock in his gains.
Sounds like they both understood the market psychology, not just the numbers.
100%. They knew that markets are driven by human emotions,
Yeah.
fear, greed, hope, all of it.
And they use that knowledge to their advantage.
Oh, yeah. Big time.
Okay, so we've got those two success stories.
Yeah.
But the perfect stock, it also talks about the big players, right? The
Yeah.
investment banks, like Sachs and Sachs, the
Yeah.
ones behind the scenes, like kind of orchestrating this whole taser thing.
Yeah, yeah. And that's where the book gets a little controversial. It kind of suggests that these big institutions, they have a vested interest in creating excitement around certain stocks, whether those stocks are like actually good long-term investments or not.
So it's not always about finding the best companies. It's about finding the companies that Wall Street's pushing.
Yeah. The book definitely makes you think about like the ethics of Wall Street, the incentives that drive these big players. It's not necessarily saying that everything is rigged, but
But it makes you wonder.
it does. It makes you wonder who's really benefiting from all this.
That's something for our listeners to think about.
For sure.
But going back to the individual investor, the one who's just trying to figure all of this out,
Right.
what are the big takeaways from the perfect stock?
Mm.
How do we avoid being another Shorty or Stu?
I think the biggest lesson is to be aware of your own psychology.
Okay.
Like, know your biases, know your fears, know when you're being greedy. The market will absolutely take advantage of those weaknesses if you let it.
So we're playing against ourselves as much as we're playing against the market.
100%.
Wow.
And the perfect stock really gives you like a framework for understanding the rules of the game, both the internal and external stuff.
Sounds like we need to be informed, disciplined, and maybe a little skeptical of the hype.
All good things.
Right.
But beyond that, you need to develop a strategy, right?
Right.
One that works for you and your goals. And most importantly, you need to have the courage to stick to it, even when everyone else is freaking out.
It's funny, we started talking about taser, but this conversation feels bigger than that.
It is, yeah.
We're talking about principles that apply to any investment, any market.
That's what's so great about this book.
Yeah.
It uses a specific story to teach us like these universal truths.
So as we wrap up part 2, what are some of the big things to remember? What are the key takeaways for our listeners?
Well, we've covered risk management, emotional discipline, understanding market psychology, but there's one more thing that the perfect stock really emphasizes.
Okay, what's that?
The power of independent thinking.
Independent thinking. I mean, it's so simple, right? But it's easier said than done, especially when we're constantly being bombarded with all this information, opinions, advice. Like, everyone's got a hot stock tip these days.
It's true. It's like drinking from a fire hose.
Exactly. So how do we filter through all the noise? How do we make smart decisions, decisions we can actually feel good about?
That's the challenge. And it's something the perfect stock really gets at. Boyd Hunt's story is like a masterclass in independent thinking. He didn't get swayed by the hype. He didn't just follow the crowd. He did his own research and he developed his own convictions.
So it's not about ignoring everyone else, right? It's more about taking in the information, but then filtering it through your own lens, your own analysis.
Yeah, exactly. Boyd, he used all the available tools, charts, news, even those online forums, but he didn't let them dictate his thinking. He was always questioning, challenging assumptions, looking for those contrarian viewpoints, the ones that often point to hidden opportunities.
That makes me think about all those analysts and commentators on the financial news channels. It's easy to just take what they're saying as gospel, like they have some kind of inside track.
Oh, yeah.
But this book, it's telling us to maybe take all that with a grain of salt.
The book is definitely pushing for a healthy dose of skepticism. Yeah. Those analysts, those commentators, they have their own agendas, their incentives.
Right.
Their job is to entertain, to create buzz, not necessarily to give, objective advice.
So it's like anything else in the media. We need to be critical, to think for ourselves.
Yeah.
And not just blindly accept everything we're told.
100%. And that critical thinking, that willingness to challenge the status quo, that's what separates the successful investors from everyone else. It's what let Boyd Hunt see the taser opportunity before anyone else did, and it's what let him get out before the whole thing crashed.
It's funny. We started this deep dive talking about taser, but this feels way bigger than that now.
It does.
We're talking about principles that apply to all areas of life, not just the stock market.
Absolutely. The book encourages us to be active participants in our own lives, to take ownership of our decisions, and to never stop learning and questioning.
Well, I think that's a great place to wrap things up. We've covered a lot in this deep dive, from the crazy ride of taser stock to like the psychology of the market, the importance of independent thinking.
It's been a great conversation. I hope our listeners, I hope they got something out of it.
I'm sure they did. The Perfect Stock is a really good book. It's a story, but it's also like a roadmap,
Yeah.
for how to navigate the market and maybe even more importantly, our own minds.
Well said. And as we finish up, I want to leave our listeners with one last thought. The next time you're faced with a big decision, whether it's about investing or your career or whatever, remember the lessons from the perfect stock. Do your research, challenge your assumptions, trust your gut, and don't be afraid to go against the grain.
Words to live by. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, and we'll catch you next time.